axis, including the moderate Arab states led by Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, sponsored by the United States, that would sponsor a Palestinian force associated with the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, that would enter the Gaza Strip, and in every place the IDF evacuates, a civil authority would take its place, run by the Palestinian Authority, which would enforce its rule and monitor it. This mistake of not accepting Biden's plan enabled Sinwar to be the only player in the arena. With one hand, we applied military force and dismantled them, and with the other hand, we have continued to enable Hamas's rule. When I worked in the prison system, in 2007, Hamas violently overthrew Fatah, murdered hundreds of their people, threw them off roofs, if not thousands. Some of them they tied to cars and drove them through the streets of Gaza until they died. Some of them were beheaded. Then Fatah understood that its greatest enemy was Hamas and not Israel. It was then that Fatah understood that Hamas waves the green flag, the flag of Islam, and not the Palestinian flag. That Hamas's struggle is not the same as Fatah's struggle. Fatah talks about two states for two nations. Fatah talks about some sort of compromise within the 1967 or 1948 borders. Hamas is fighting a religious war against the state of Israel. What Hamas did to Fatah in 2007, who are his brothers, they're Muslims, if he did that to Muslims, what will they do to the Jews when they could? In 2007 in prison, the Fatah leadership came to us, the intelligence officers, and demanded and requested of us to remove all of the Hamas prisoners from the Fatah quarters, otherwise they will murder them. They told us, the intelligence officers and the Israeli commanders, that they don't see Hamas as part of their struggle against Israel. They see them as traitors and enemies. And since then, in the West Bank, Fatah is waging an all-out war against Hamas. Not because of their love for Israel, but because they suspect they could lose control of the West Bank as they did in Gaza. And because they fear that Hamas could rise up in the West Bank as they did in Gaza. Hamas only sees one way, a Muslim state, a Muslim caliphate, and if the Fatah gets in its way, it will harm Fatah too. Therefore, it was obvious that we should have exploited this, the same way we did in prison, but outside as well. Sinwar is most afraid of a scenario in which Fatah would control Gaza and not Israeli control, because Israel is an enemy in the eyes of the Palestinians. So he will always be able to draft people against Israel in order to conduct guerrilla warfare. But up against Fatah, it will be more difficult because the Fatah is part of its own nation.
Fighting about Hamas, but did the government, did the Israeli security, intelligence, society learn anything about Hamas?
Unfortunately, the Israeli leadership did not study Hamas, and a lot of people among us, even in the intelligence service, did not know and learn Hamas well enough. All we needed to do was listen to them. Our attitude towards Hamas was arrogant. We dismissed Hamas, and Hamas said everything it intended to do, but we didn't want to listen. This is one thing. The second thing is there was a wrong conception. The conception with which we acted towards Hamas was wrong. Israel should have toppled Hamas in many opportunities. Since 2007, when Hamas came into power in Gaza, we should have toppled it. Hamas' rule had to be toppled. And each time we didn't do it, we got an even stronger Hamas, strengthening its rule of Gaza and armoring itself for 2023. The mistake was to differentiate between Gaza and the West Bank, between Hamas and Fatah. It served Hamas. It didn't serve us. We thought that we could isolate Hamas, that we had the technological means to keep Hamas inside the borders of Gaza, and we will have intelligence to alert the enemy's intention to hurt us, and that we would be prepared for it ahead of time. I think we established our intelligence too much on technology and less on human intelligence. And human intelligence could have recognized better the intention of the enemy, the intention of Hamas to do this criminal raid, and we could have known about it in advance, and we wouldn't have found ourselves surprised. So our conception collapsed. Also, the strengthening of Hamas with Qatari money was a mistake. We made many mistakes because our leaders and IDF and intelligence members were wrong about their conception or their understanding of Hamas.